There are features that they are coming in our cars today from a software point of view that they are mind-blowing. But the way it's actually going to happen in the future is more around trying to use AI and machine learning to learn what the user does. These systems are, I would say, today in their infancy. The more they progress, the more they will become capable of actually driving way better than humans.
Hello, we are at Andersen RnD channel, and today we're having an interview with a very interesting guest, Dr. Mario De Felice, who is the leading voice of Jaguar Land Rover for automotive software. We're going to talk about automotive trends, about software, and of course about the future. You even defended the PhD thesis on vehicular networking for safety in infotainment services. That's truly impressive. What brought you to this industry?
So I've always liked software and I've always liked cars. So since I was young, I was kind of looking for a career where I could do both of them. So when I started computer engineering, I was looking for ways where I could introduce cars in what I was doing. And at that point, V2X was becoming quite a strong topic in the industry, and it still is, obviously, as today. So I specialized in that field, looking at infotainment and ADAS services with V2X in mind. And obviously the next step was around looking for something that was closer to production, because realistically I loved research, but I kind of liked the idea of doing something that people can use every day and you see and you like it every day. So that's kind of what brought me here.
And if you could choose another area of expertise, what would it be?
That's a good question. I think I am a software expert. I've always worked in software, and to be fair, I don't think I need to look for a different area of expertise, because software is so big that you can really focus on so many little areas within software. My specialization is more around embedded software, but at the end of the day, there is cloud software as well, which is becoming so much more prevalent these days, and most of the innovations are actually coming from that direction as well. So topics like containerization, but also AI and machine learning are becoming so interesting these days that I really find myself navigating through these different topics.
Now let's talk about today's major automotive trends, namely the concept of software-defined vehicles. This is a popular concept, and in my experience, everyone seems to have their own view of what it is. Could you share yours?
Sure, absolutely. So software-defined vehicles, as you said, everyone has got a different definition, and everyone is actually working on it right now. It's whether you're working in a tier 1 space, or whether you're working in an OEM space, SDV is part of what companies are working on at the moment. And arguably, even just the vehicles that we see around us today are already software-defined vehicles, because at the end of the day, you can do things like software update. So you can change what they do. And at the end of the day, that's software defining the vehicle. So if you want version 1.0 of software-defined vehicle is already around us. But for me, software-defined vehicles is a bit more than that. It's actually way more than that. It's mainly about two things. First thing is transparency of execution. So you can execute your software on the vehicle, you can execute the software in the cloud, in the edge, and really it's the capability of not having to worry about where your software is. That means obviously containerization, and that means obviously service-oriented architecture. The other aspect of it is centralization of hardware, consolidation of hardware. So in automotive, this has been a trend for the past probably 10 years. and it's quite a strong trend that is actually bringing cars from being from 100 plus ECUs to less and less, ECUs, even up to some of our, some of the US car manufacturers that have, bigger single computes that do quite a lot of functionality. So, and at the end of the day, SDV is also about that. It's about bringing general purpose hardware where you can execute your software without having to worry too much about what's basically under the hood. So that's, for me, the second vision of what a software-defined vehicle is.
Thank you. It's interesting. Software is essential in every industry, but it's so widespread that people often overlook the benefits of product they use. With so many digital processes now, many features are taken for granted. For example, people are used to having email apps on their phones. 10 years ago, some decades ago, this was not even possible. So, could you share some examples of how automotive software has made a significant difference in cars?
One of the features that I like the most are, obviously all of the remote controls for your vehicles, your capability to lock and unlock your vehicle, to set remote climate, but simply just to literally interact with your vehicle from your sofa. You can buy new features, you can schedule, maintenance appointments and stuff like that. But realistically, effectively, for a person like me, I think even just looking if you locked your car or not is very important. But above and beyond that, for me, there are features that they are coming in our cars today from a software point of view that are mind-blowing. I wish I could say a bit more about that, but the idea is, with software-defined vehicle and with this trend, actually, what this also means is that software is coming into a vehicle to actually even rejuvenate our vehicles, to make them more modern, even if you're not, even if you bought your car 5 years ago or something.
Are there any differences in the approach to automotive software development between luxury brands and mass-market manufacturers? Or does software remain software regardless of the segment, in your opinion?
Generally speaking, software is software, but there are many differences if you look at luxury brands versus the rest. The first one is hardware capabilities, but also cloud resources. Obviously, in a luxury brand, you're going to have most likely the top-of-the-notch hardware to run your software on. So that means that whatever you want to run is going to run smoother. You can run 3D animations. So even just the way it runs, or even just the technologies you want to use, are going to evolve and are going to be just better and just nicer. And I mentioned also cloud environment because it is quite important. It's not just about the hardware that you've got on your vehicle. It's also about what kind of cloud you've got behind it. Nowadays, most of the services you get on your car actually do come thanks to cloud services. And that's been really a shift with respect to the past. That's also where the innovation is coming, because we went from a situation where everyone was kind of using services in the cloud. Say, if you had navigation, connected navigation, you were using services that were coming from different tier ones. They were not integrated, not unified, to where we are today, where instead, companies have their own cloud, OEMs have got their own cloud and they integrate their services and offer a unified experience. And a luxury brand basically is curating that aspect way more than it was done in the industry just 5 to 10 years ago. So that's point one. There is also another important aspect, which is around the HMI, the graphics, the human-to-machine interface, the graphics of the systems that you enjoy in your car. A luxury brand definitely dedicates a lot more attention, not only to how good it looks and to how kind of shows you and showcases your brand, but also to things like how intuitive it is, how easy it is to work with, which is, at the end of the day, if you're driving your car, that's almost as important as, as the functionality itself.
Meet Andersen, the custom software development company. It sounds boring, but it's effective. We're a global company that work with the best: Microsoft, Samsung, Oracle, AWS, and many others. 17 years on the market, with over 3,000 highly skilled professionals and 1,000 world-class projects delivered. Meet the Andersen team, and let's create some great projects together. Follow the link and book your free consultation right now.
Software-defined vehicles are often compared to mobile phones. Both rely on software and regular updates. However, today mobile phones quickly become outdated. When it comes to vehicles, you can't just buy a new one every 2 years. Will the mechanical part of vehicles, the equivalent of the phone's hardware, be solid enough to accommodate all the potential updates for at least 10 years? Do you take this aspect into account when developing software?
So this is an excellent question, especially because now there is regulations that obviously mandate that you need to support, the vehicle for so many years. So from a solidity point of view, mechanical point of view, of course, right? So it's definitely okay. Also for the the hardware of the your infotainment systems, your ADAS systems, so on and so forth. The most interesting part is is your car and your software still going to be relevant in 10 years, right? So that's the big question. That's basically the question that everyone is trying to resolve at the moment. There are many answers to it. I think the answer that I've got in my head is around how do we make, coming back to the concept that we were talking about before, how do I make my hardware the most kind of the most transparent as possible with respect to my software? How can I offload some of the old functionalities and basically bring some of the new features on board via maybe containerization, via app stores, and realistically, how do I use the connectivity and the cloud to help me on that journey? Because realistically, if you think about it, I think the first iPhone came out in 2007. So, and if you think can I run a modern feature, even just Facebook, right? Can I run it on that iPhone? I think the answer is going to be no, or it's going to run very badly. So obviously in cars, we don't have the same luxury of thinking, okay, I'm going to throw away the phone and buy another one. So what we need to be clever about is we need to use the cloud and the connectivity to maybe let that hardware only do the things that it can do. And looking at the future, how do we actually locate our services and features outside of the vehicle, and then possibly use the connectivity to basically stream them in the vehicle or make them execute off board. So that's really the the key aspect that we need to look into, and that's kind of future-proofing the vehicles.
And what about internet disruptions? Will such cars like software-defined cars, connected vehicles, be able to function properly if there is no stable connection?
Normally this is an issue, right? So today there are solutions that we can deploy on the field in 2024, but actually going forward there's going to be even better solutions. The one that we put in place now, today in 2024, are about, caching, are about looking at, kind of where the car is going and trying to anticipate what the user is doing by downloading, content before it's used. But the way it's actually going to happen in the future is more around trying to use AI and machine learning to learn what the user does, to learn what you actually are doing, how you're using your vehicle, which features you're using, and then be able to get you that content before you need it, because maybe I know where you're going, maybe I know what your usual routes are, you've set your navigation on, and via machine learning, I can understand where there's going to be no signal. So trying to anticipate and use the technologies that we've got today to resolve this problem and basically get you the content you need. This is like we are going in that direction in terms of connectivity with satellites as well. So that's definitely something we need to work on in the industry in general to move in that direction. However, I have to say that obviously I do still expect a minimal level of functionality that has to be guaranteed on board, especially all of the legal features, but also some of the basic features, because obviously, things can always go wrong. And obviously we're still discovering technologies like machine learning and AI today, so we don't know how much we can push. I'm sure you can push a lot, but as much as we know today, I think definitely there's still, a basic level of functionalities that need to be purely connected to the vehicle, basically.
Mario, automotive innovations are indeed breathtaking today, but we still live in a world where backup manual options are necessary for many operations. At the same time, if things get much easier for us, we can gradually lose the skills that we have today, especially in driving. Don't you think that over-reliance on automation and feature-rich software can simply weaken our driving skills? This might be quite dangerous in certain situations where, for instance, we will need to retain control ourselves.
That's true, but the only thing I can say is that the only constant in modern world is change. So we I like to look forward, and I like to look at what can we get with these new technologies. Every time mankind has moved forward, we more often than not, we had to lose something. Or we were not paying so much more attention to that, and we were moving to the next thing. And it's all about looking at what are we getting out of this transformation. And for me, what are we getting out of this is improvements on safety as well on the road, because autonomous vehicles, obviously everyone is still working on them. They're still in their infancy, but what they do, they're actually much, they are already, but they will be much safer than actually humans drive in trying to resolve issues like, if you're not paying attention to the road, or, issues like drunk driving, this kind of stuff is these kind of problems go to a side a bit if you have autonomous vehicles. So I think the perfect answer doesn't exist. Everyone will find their own answer, but clearly, I think there are some pros in looking ahead and in trying to actually, ultimately, for me, the key is actually make it overall, a safer experience. So that's what we need to aim for.
Mario, my next question is about ADAS, the technology crucial for improving road safety and fully aligned with the Vision Zero initiative, which aims to eliminate traffic-related deaths by 2050. However, these systems are currently found mostly in premium vehicles. What steps should be taken, in your opinion, to make them accessible across other vehicle segments?
Well, I think surely regulation is going to help, and regulation is moving in one clear direction. So it's making ADAS systems, mandatory more and more as we move forward. So it started really with passive safety, so making the cars safer from a passive point of view, and now it's becoming more about active safety as well, which is ADAS systems as well, part of this. So this is one of the crucial driving. It always is. Regulation always is one of the crucial drivers for standardization, and especially in Europe, we're always we pay a lot of attention on safety. So I think that I see that trend going forward and driving some of this transformation. At the same time, I think there are other factors that could also help in that direction. and one of them is like trickle-down technology. The more, the more we start doing things with luxury vehicles, the more this is gonna trickle down and become cheaper and cheaper just by economy of scale, and then be available in everyday vehicle going forward.
You have extensive experience in infotainment systems. In your opinion, how will they evolve over the next 5 to 10 years? Will there be new ways of delivering engaging user experience besides today's screens and dashboards?
So definitely yes. There is a lot of research in that area, and clearly, even if you look at what augmented reality is kind of giving us in our living rooms today, I think some of that is going to come in the vehicles as well. So be able to, see things that help you either with your driving, experience, and or also for like pure entertainment. I think I see that as a massive trend. But also, if you look at like, purely infotainment systems, I don't think it's just about screens. It's also about, people wanting to find their own space, especially with autonomous vehicles becoming so prevalent, people wanting to find their own space, their own, relax area, relax cocoon almost, that kind of bring them to a destination. So not just about bigger screens. I don't think that is necessarily always the answer. Sometimes it's about, maybe noise cancellation or like a good high quality audio system. For sure, one of the things that is definitely going to happen, that is already happening today and has been happening for the past 5 or 6 years, is integration of your mobile phone into your car more and more. If you think about it, you spend with that device many hours a day, let's say 18 hours a day, right? While instead in your car, you probably spend 1, maximum 2. So, integration of that in your vehicle with infotainment is one of the biggest current drivers that we're having at the moment.
What do you think is the most useful infotainment feature in cars today? A camera, streaming services, or maybe navigation?
Well, it'd be easier to say navigation, right? So I'm not going to say that. I think it's voice, because today, as you're driving around, you have a lot of features in your infotainment system. And as you see, infotainment systems are becoming more like, all the buttons are coming into your central screen. So it's becoming more and more difficult to control all of these features. So I think voice is actually the most useful thing for me. So I basically almost never touch anything on the screen. I basically just talk to the car. And with some of the latest technologies, I'm not going to say AI again. I'm not going to say Gen AI again, because otherwise the buzzwords meter is going to go too high. But definitely with these technologies, this kind of natural interaction with your vehicle and the voice control of the vehicle is becoming a lot more accessible and a lot simpler. So I would say that is my main feature, my favorite feature in an infotainment system.
With the first autonomous car already on the road, for example, Waymo in the US, how will vehicles' cabins evolve, in your opinion? Will we see more desks there, or maybe more screens, or maybe even a coffee machine?
Vehicle is really, I think, going to become more of your personal space. So not only personalized in terms of maybe which seats or which kind of relaxing environment we would like, but also around maybe with software helping you on what actual software features are you going to get in your vehicle. A little bit more like what happens with your phone. So you're not going to have default features always on, but you're going to tailor your experience and your vehicle to what you actually need and what you actually want.
Mario, now let's discuss vehicle security. Software-defined electric connected vehicles require access to user data to ensure personalization of your driving experience and maximum comfort. However, consumers are concerned about their sensitive information stored in the cloud or elsewhere. What encryption and cybersecurity measures are a must to protect car owners and at the same time ensure seamless vehicle performance?
I think like port of defense number one is normally GDPR. So making sure that user consent is actually, the first thing that, we look at. So we manage that appropriately. The customer, the user knows what they're sharing and they actually agree with it. They know what's happening with that data. Step number two is obviously what we're going to do about security. Well, if I look at the vehicles, again, just a few years ago, security was barely existing. And be able to hack a vehicle was a lot easier than it would have been today. And that's the same trend that goes on in IT, right? Because normally what you see in IT kind of follows through into automotive, and normally what you see in automotive follows through in aerospace, so on and so forth, with just 5 to 10 years difference. And what's going on in automotive today is that security is quite strong and it's a priority. First of all, it's regulated, so you need to do it because there is a regulation. But as I always love to say, I was doing security before the regulations mandated it, because actually your concern is protecting the customer. So you want to do that, and you want to do that very well, and you want to put that at the center of the product you're making. So it needs to be at the basis of what you do. And a lot of technologies that were not even there in automotive are now there. So a lot of the processing power that we actually use is actually used for encryption. Things like authentication are becoming a thing now. Even inside the vehicle, you need to authenticate services even inside the vehicle. It's a completely new and different world. Key management systems in the vehicles, certificates, it's basically closer to a server than it is to a car when you think about it.
Is open source software reliable when it comes to compatibility and security?
I really like this question, so thanks for asking it. I am a very strong sustainer of open source software. I think it's really important that we start looking at it more and more. In automotive, but literally in everything we use every day, there is open source software, whether our kind of tier ones and suppliers tell us about it or not. More often than not, in 99% of the cases, there is some open software that we're using. So for me, that's the basics of what we need to use going forward, especially because we don't want to recreate the wheel every time. So if there is a piece of software that is there, it works, it does what it's supposed to be doing, and is open source, I think there is nothing wrong with using it. Often the problem is around liability. So we like to think that if a piece of software is closed source and I'm buying it, then obviously I go and talk to whomever sold me that piece of software, but even sold me some piece of hardware, right? And you say, okay, you sold it to me, so I can come to you if it doesn't work. But actually, with open source software, this is not possible. But at the same time, there are companies that work with that and obviously provide support models around it, which make it possible, a viable way of doing software. But if you take a reliable, repository, it's actually even safer than the software that we buy closed source. Most of the algorithms that are used for cryptography are open source. And if you think about the fact that we use open source cryptography, which is about security, that could make you understand that, okay, maybe that is secure. it is open source, so everyone can go there and everyone can review it and everyone can try and break it. And if they do, they normally fix it because it's like it's open source, or at least they make it visible so that people can do something about it. So that's, for me, the power of open source. If you've got closed source, if I hack something, it's in my interest not to tell anyone and to try and maybe make some money out of it. So in my opinion, it's always counterintuitive, but open source, I think, for me, is even more secure. And it's the way to, I think, move faster, which we desperately, desperately need to do.
You work for the leading British automotive manufacturer. Today, there is a strong competition from other regions, especially China. China is currently leading in e-mobility adoption, and they even explore innovations like flying cars. Can Europe and the UK offer solutions competitive enough to keep up with the daring manufacturers from the East?
So I think automotive today is at a, it's facing kind of an existential crisis. The way we do vehicles is changing, and it's changed in a few years. In the space of 2 to 3 years, the complete landscape has changed. In China, vehicles are just like the whole development life cycle is completely different. It's a lot faster, and they've got different goals in mind as well, in terms of how do we achieve the product on the road, different gateways as well. What can we do about it? Certainly, as I was saying before, speed is crucial. So we need to change what we do today. We cannot keep going the way we are going today. So speed is crucial. We need to increase automation. We need to work on how do we make software faster, quicker, and more reliably. So a lot of again buzzwords, but actually for me it all comes down to CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery. So how can we embed in our pipelines building the software? How can we embed all of the checks that are required to actually guarantee the quality? But also, how can we integrate more and more systems into it so that we basically increase our speed without losing the quality? Because at the end of the day, I think quality, especially for luxury brands, but in general for European brands, we do care quite a lot about that, and we're never gonna let that go. So the only solution is really getting into a conversation around continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous compliance. So as you build your software, it needs to always be compliant. It always needs to satisfy your quality checks. For me, that is the only way. Replacing some of the, a lot of the manual steps, a lot of the manual, lengthy tasks that we have today with, very, very efficient pipelines.
Staying on the same subject a little bit more, in the past, automotive companies worldwide used to learn from European brands. However, as we have just discussed, the situation has changed. Is Europe now adopting certain manufacturing and software development practices from the East?
I think we all learn from each other. So whether we want it or not, there is always we always go and look at the new vehicle, whether it's from China, the US or Europe. You always go and look at it and try and understand what they've done. And if there's something that has worked particularly well, you try and do the same and actually do a step more, a step further. It's like Formula One, right? One comes with a different way of doing things. You have to kind of look at it and understand what's good and bad, and maybe you can do even better by looking at that or whatever. So I think it's the era of China looking at Europe and learning is over. So I think we're just working. It's just like a Formula One race at the moment. Yeah.
Mario, thank you so much for sharing your expertise here. Now I'd like to ask you several short questions, simply to wrap up our conversation.
Sure.
Do you prefer vintage or modern cars?
Well, I must say I like modern cars, but this is a difficult question. So if you give me a really, really good old vintage car, I might like that as well. But I have to say I use my car more as an office sometimes. So modern cars kind of give you at least a little bit more of that feature set.
And what do you think will see faster development? Self-driving cars or flying cars?
I think flying cars is a bit of a myth. So I don't think we really need flying cars yet. Let's try to get at least, our cars moving, moving reliably on the road and safely on the road more and more. So for me, the priority and what we'll see first is definitely, self-driving cars, but, with a strong attention to safety. I think that's the most important bit.
Proprietary software or rather open source?
Well, it's kind of I let that go before. It's open source. It has to be. I think it's the future. I think proprietary software has got a strong place, and it's got its points where it needs to be used, but it has to be open source software. As a society, we do need to help each other a bit more. I mean, maybe that is the message more than just open source software.
An eco-friendly electric car or a ride-sharing for your personal transportation needs?
Ride-sharing is actually, a really, really good proposition. And I think there isn't a simple answer to this. I think it's both. It depends on the situation. It depends on the specifics. But yeah, if I really, really have to choose, it's probably eco-friendly car. I think you cannot argue with eco-friendly cars anyway.
And which is more important for safety, human driving skills or advanced software systems?
I think, so we kind of spoke about this a bit. I think it's both. Human driving skills, I think they're always required, because at the end of the day, even if your car drives on its own, you still, you having the skills to, do specific maneuvers on your own, I think is ultimately still going to be there. I don't think it's going away very soon. So I think that's still important. But at the same time, all of the autonomous systems that assist us are like basically saving lives already today. If you think about all of the ADAS systems that keep you in lane, they monitor if you're awake or not, you may fall asleep at the wheel. All of these systems, they're already saving lives today. So it's about, yes, you be able to drive efficiently and effectively and safely, but it's also about, okay, what are you getting out of your vehicle that is improving your driving skills even more.
If you talk about the future, what would you rather prefer, driving yourself or fully relying on self-driving cars?
So I tell you what, every day going to the office, having a self-driving car, I would love it. So I don't have to think about anything, and you get to the office, maybe you get a coffee in your car, talking about, coffee machines in the car. Then you get to the office and you're fresh, rather than having to drive more often than not in traffic, especially if you live in a big city. But there are times where you say, okay, it's Friday afternoon, sunset. Maybe at that point you do want to drive. So I love to think that we'll never lose that. So we'll always have a space and a place for, people driving themselves. I don't think that is never, I don't think that is going away.
Do you think the cars of the future will still have steering wheels?
I won't name names, but I think some vehicles without steering wheels already exist today, obviously at experimental stage. But I think ultimately, yes, they will always have a steering wheel for that Friday afternoon, I think.
And what do you think about biometric access to car functions as a feasible idea?
It is. It is, but at the same time, it depends on how you do it. There are lots of challenges around reliability of it, but also security of it. ultimately, I can see technologies like, phone as a key becoming more and more prevalent, more than strictly thinking about biometric, but more thinking about, okay, what are the tools and devices that I already have today that basically could tell my car that this is me, and I need to get in the vehicle. So there is a lot more around the experience of approaching and leaving your vehicle that is going to change completely. I think even what I'm seeing today in concept stages, but even some early production vehicles in Europe and actually in China as well, is completely already blowing my mind in that department.
Mario, if you could add one science fiction feature to vehicles today, what would it be?
I would definitely say something around, a vehicle with a personality, right? So riding the voice as my favorite feature, I would definitely have a vehicle with a personality as a sci-fi feature. But maybe today that's not sci-fi anymore, right? Maybe in just a few years we'll be able to actually have that already. So
Mario, thank you very much for this insightful talk.
no worries, it's been a pleasure.